material.
Mike's Daily Podcast.
We're at Cafe Anyway, somewhere in Podcastro Valentino.
Mike's Daily Podcast.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. It's going to cover lots of stuff fast. If you don't like it, then there's something you can do. You can kiss the back of an apple or the front of an apple, because apples are delicious for you and they've got vitamins too. And what did you think I was singing about? I'm shocked.
Mike's Daily Podcast.
Apples. I had quite a few apples growing in my
Mike's
backyard last year.
Daily
And I don't know,
Podcast.
I didn't plant these apples.
Yeah!
They just showed up, and then there's a bunch. And every year there's more, and I love it. And I use a lot in smoothies, and guess what you do with apples and smoothies? You add cinnamon. Cinnamon, your favorite type of milk, be it out of a cow or out of a plant, and then you mix it all up with some ice. And actually, you know what? You chop up the apples and you freeze them. Chop them up first, though, because you don't want to freeze a whole apple. It's going to be difficult for that blender to chop it up when it's a solid block of ice. So, that's my tip for you. What do you think about that? All kinds of stuff to... It's funny because we were discussing someone who's like a local radio celebrity type. We were discussing how when you Google yourself, you will be amazed by what you find. And when you Google me, Michael Matthews, you immediately get the Michael Matthews, the author who writes all these weightlifting books. And he's cut, he's muscular, and he takes steroids. No, I don't know. I think he does something called the Healthy My Daily Apple or Mike's Daily Apple, something like that. So speaking of apples, but I am not him. I am not cut. I am not going to do that.
And here's today's podcast picture.
Steroid, or I'm not going to take the protein shakes or add the protein in the whey. Partly because it's got the dairy in it that's bad for me. I'm pretty much lactose intolerant, so it doesn't work for me. Perhaps it'll work for you. I don't know. Consult a doctor beforehand. That's where we are. It's Cafe Anyway, and the podcast picture today is of not of the late great Basil the Boxer, my dearest friend who I miss every single day. But actually, his bed remained empty for quite a while after he passed in 2020. And it was really sad. I'd look at the empty bed, and it was just very sad. Little big Costco bed. It was big. It wasn't little. It was big. Big Costco bed that he laid in because he was a big dog, big boxer, 85 pounds. And then this weird thing happened. Last year, this cat started coming around just out of nowhere. We called him Patches because he had these bizarre blotches of black on his fur. And just patches of black all over him. But then other parts would be patches of white. So it was just patches because we were creative like that. My lovely lady friend and I. And then Patches was so skittish as soon as he would see us. And actually we thought he was a she back then. Until I saw the protrusions that an unfixed male cat will have if you look at them from the back. So, Patches was so skittish, would run away, and we kept feeding him, and slowly he got closer and closer to us. And then my lovely lady friend and I said, well, he really needs to be fixed. If he is a feral cat, he should be fixed. We should do our duty to prevent the cat population from going out of sight in Podcastro Valley. So in October, November, somewhere around there of last year, we caught him. He did not like that. It was actually not fun because he was meowing a bunch, and you got to catch him the night before. Because if you're going to take him to the free feral cat fixing clinic, it's early in the morning in Oakland. You got to get there. So we caught him the night before, and then he was taken to Oakland where he was fixed. And they also did a checkup on him. Found out that he was over 5 years old. We had no idea. And we took him home and they said, just keep him in the cage till tomorrow morning because he's convalescing. He's getting better. So we did that, and he meowed all night. Complained all night, and then let him go in the morning, and he was off into the bushes, and we thought we'd never see him again. Well, he showed up for dinner that night, and then kept showing up, and now he's friendly as ever. He's forgiven us. And that's Patches from yesterday sitting next to me on Basil's bed. The empty bed now has a friend. And those little things, those little toys around him are actually little catnip toys that he keeps around him. It's sort of his little, how when you were a kid, you went to sleep with your little teddy bear or a little something, I don't know what it was. Maybe you hugged a pillow, some people. Maybe if you were Mike Lindell, you hugged a pillow. But whatever it was, that's his little sleeping friend, his catnip toys. See that picture at mikesdailypodcast.com. Okay. We have lots to get to today because it is my daily podcast, and I have been daily for the past couple of days, and you can chime in at 336mm daily. That's 3 + 3 = 6. MM is in Mike Matthews. Daily isn't what this podcast is. Let's talk about podcasts really quickly. If you do not know, if this is the first time you've ever listened to a podcast, wow, I'm honored because this is amazing that you listen to this podcast for your first podcast, even though it has podcast in the name and has had podcast in the name for over 10 years. Because we are in FF episode 2380, 2380. And I caught this little email from a radio consultant. Now, this guy has been consulting for a long time. I have been on his newsletter list since practically at the beginning of email. He has been emailing me. And I haven't read it in a long time. And I finally opened up his latest email, and he's still doing it after all this time, even though he has the same picture of himself from 30 years ago. Yours truly puts a picture of what he looked like yesterday because he's daring and he's honest and he's brave. But this guy keeps a picture from 30 years ago, so what does he know? But he's a consultant, and he regurgitates the same stuff every radio consultant tells every radio station about all these things called benchmarks. I won't bore you with what those are, with bits, with go outside a cafe anyway, time spent listening, somewhere in Podcastro Valleyton, the last place on earth, all this stuff. But one of the things that I found interesting after going through the regular diatribe of blah that he spouts, which may have done radio stations good back in 1986 when I started in radio, but not today. It's a whole new world. So he has this section called Podcasting's Popularity. A lot of plosives. It says Edison's infinite dial numbers looked at the podcast habits of several English language speaking countries, and it finds that 41% of the US and the British adults listen to a podcast each month, compared to 38% of Canadians and 36% of Australians. Wow. Thank you for letting us know about that very impressive study that found that very impressive chunk of data. Wow. So Americans and the English listen to podcasts a little bit more than Canadians and Australians. Thank you. But still less than half. However, the numbers have, quote, evened out as other countries have been catching up to the U.S., this says. One of the more controversial reports was its finding that the Joe Rogan Experience was the #1 podcast among men, and it ranked 3rd among women. A part of me just died saying that sentence. Well, am I jealous that he's a bald guy that likes to wear black t-shirts a lot and has a gazillion times more listeners than me? I'm just jealous that he was on News Radio, the show with the young, what was his name from Kids in the Hall? that guy. I want to say Donald Fagen, but that is totally not his name. And then the late, great Phil Hartman was on that show. And it exposed the world of talk radio. It's fun to watch that show now because it's so old and dated and the comedy is awful. And it supposedly is what... I mean, okay, so we lost Howard Hessman recently. WKRP in Cincinnati was pretty darn on target when it comes to radio. Thank you, Mary Tyler Moore, for creating that show or producing it or being the executive producer of that show, because that show is fantastic and is joked about even today with the young kids that get into radio now. They're like, really? Was that what it was? Yeah. Yes. And it's still kind of like that. The basic tropes are there for any radio station. You watch that on WKRP in Cincinnati. And Howard Hessman, wait, I am saying his name right, aren't I? Howard was, in fact, Hessman was a DJ. Now, this according to the book that I read, Radio Waves, by Jim Ladd. I think he had actually worked with him at KMET in Los Angeles. It was like one of the first rock stations, album-oriented rock stations that was, playing Pink Floyd. And let's see, he did work in San Francisco, as a matter of fact, at KMPX, the very famous underground FM station, playing rock. And that's okay. Well, he was on Dragnet, Andy Griffith's show. Dang. Goes into some interesting. Johnny Fever, of course, on WKRP in Cincinnati from 78 to 82. He prepared for it by working as a DJ in San Francisco. That's how it worked out. He did that because he was an actor and he wanted the experience. He reprised the role in 9 episodes of the new WKRP in Cincinnati and also directed several episodes. And then he was on Head of the Class. You know the guy on Head of the Class with the glasses? The kid? It's kind of the ultra nerd. I met him. Very nice guy. We talked for a little bit. We were at some event in Camarillo, California. All right, so back to Joe Rogan. And yes, he apologized about the whole Neil Young thing. And was like, hey, I will invite pro-vaxxers as well as the anti-vaxxers onto my show. We'll see if that happens. And because of what he said, now Spotify is all like, super careful about the kind of podcast that spread misinformation. While it may not sit right with some folks, a show only makes the top podcast list with the support of men and women. The 2021 ranker also had more variety than seen in the past. In 2019, true crime took up 5 of the top 10 spots in podcasts. Now we see news, society, culture, relationships, and comedy are in the top 5 of the podcast world. All right? There you go. That's podcasting. Now, here I am doing a podcast, trying to bring you a podcast that's helpful in some way. Thanks to the fact that I like reading about helpful stuff and helpful information that will help me and that will help other people. It fascinates me, that topic. I could talk about comic books and sci-fi movies, but I'm not really into that. Although I will tell you, if you do have a Netflix account, this is not a sci-fi movie show, TV show, though Netflix has most of their programming. But if you do have a Netflix account, do not go out and get a Netflix account for this. But if you do already have one, watch the Murderville show with Will Arnett. An interesting concept you will probably not see anywhere else. What they do is they invite a celebrity guest who is like the new partner for Will Arnett's. He's some kind of investigator for the police department. And so it's a crime-solving comedy type show. Now, the celebrity guest has not been given a script, So they don't know what Will Arnett's going to say. They're just dressed up playing themselves, and then they have to solve the crime. And there is a lot of, that's something you've probably seen done by improv theater groups. There are other improv theater groups thrown into this show, type antics, type games, improv games thrown into this show that you will also see. The first guest of the first episode is none other than Conan O'Brien. And it's pretty funny. And he laughs. Sometimes the actors will laugh. It's good stuff. Okay, so check that. That's my little tip. But I like telling you things to help you. Did you know that, this time of year, we are not experiencing as much sunlight as we usually do? It's going to be dark in about an hour from now when I'm doing this podcast, and that makes me sad. But if you feel like your days are getting shorter, try these ideas to add some extra light to your day. Invigorate yourself with citrus aromatic therapy. Citrus aromatic therapy. Oh, really? I do not know what that is. I should look that up, or maybe you can if you want. You can sing the blues away. Try singing. Plan ahead for the holidays. Oh, we've already gotten through the holidays. Although we've got Valentine's Day coming up. And then lovely lady friend's birthday, and then St. Patrick's Day, and then Easter and Good Friday, and yes. Try a new cold weather workout, like ice skating. Or now if you watch the Winter Olympics, that is not one of the ways, that is not an activity. I guess it is an activity, but maybe it will inspire you to try some of the sports or something thereof. I watched curling the other night, for example. Not that I want to do that, but hey, see, these are people that aren't just sitting in their house feeling miserable. They're getting outside and trying to beat each other. Although, actually, they're not really outside. Some of the times they're inside, like with curling. Reach for a smart snack and spend time in nature. Even though it's cold, bundle up and spend time in nature. I'm going to be in Shasta in about 2 weeks. Looking forward to that, being out in the snow and enjoying that. Okay, now, beyond, when this light is back to normal and we're getting nice, long, sunny days again, preserve your good health. Staying up to date on the latest recommendations to better defend against health and medical problems is more important now than ever. At the pharmacy, it can be easy to miss a dose or take the wrong amount of medication. For your medications to work properly, it's vital you take them as instructed. This also keeps you safe and prevents any adverse effects on your health. If you're struggling to manage various medications, ask your doctor or pharmacist for help. At home, there's been a sharp increase in the sales of alcohol during this pandemic. This may be because people are spending more time at home or are using it to cope with anxiety or boredom. There's no safe level of drinking alcohol. 1 drink per day for women and 2 for men won't affect the functioning of your immune system, but heavy consumption, which is like 8 drinks or more per week for women and 15 or more for men, reduces the ability to cope with infectious diseases and can worsen any chronic disorders such as heart disease, high blood pressure, or asthma. And always, while going to your doctor's office or clinic can be challenging, it's very important you continue to maintain a good relationship with your healthcare provider and stay up to date on your tests, on your vaccinations, and your screenings. Everyone should get a flu shot. Your doctor may advise you that you need to keep up with your tetanus and whooping cough shots, or be screened for diabetes, osteoporosis, and always make good health your goal. Look after your bone health. Take medication as prescribed. Know your medicines. Reverse pre-diabetes. Or if you have to live well, if you already have diabetes, live well with diabetes and keep your feet under you. keep your feet under you. Hey, my feet are under me, but I'm sitting. Is that the same thing? This all from Vitality. They have this powerofvitality.com website, and I got some information from that as well, from the last thing we were talking about. The coping with the less light thing. 5 ways to keep your, online. You've got all this, your stuff is online. So therefore, you need a password to get to your stuff that's online. And they have 5 ways to keep your account information safe. This is also from Power of Vitality. Thank you for taking an interest in my internet health as well. I'll just tell you these real quick. Use a different password on each website. I've heard that before. Don't use personal information in your passwords, because cyber criminals often use social media or publicly available information to find out your personal information. Use an uncommon sentence. What would be an example of that? Superman eats pancakes. Now, I guess none of us can use that one. But then interrupt it with all kinds of symbols and numbers. Instead of like saying Superman eats with the A and eats, use a at sign. Don't use single dictionary words for your password, and beware of malware and phishing. Malware is that software that you accidentally download on your device by clicking on a suspicious link. Oh, just always know where the links come from. You can hover your mouse over the link to see what it is. But Federal Trade Commission's malware guide is probably the best way to look at this and to be smart about it. So you want to avoid the malware, because it can record your personal information and passwords, and avoid email phishing, which attacks they impersonate a company or a person that you know, and they're used to steal your information by getting you to give away personal information like your login details. So watch out for that, and there's details about that. Federal Trade Commission's How to Recognize and Avoid Phishing Scams page. And ending the show outside a cafe anyway, somewhere in Podcastro Valleyton, the last place on earth. Speaking of Joe Rogan, earlier in the show, Dwayne The Rock, appeared to walk back his support for Joe amid the Spotify controversy on Friday after learning about the podcaster's use of the N-word. The Rock said, "I was not aware of his N-word use prior to my comments, but now I've become educated to his complete narrative. It's a learning moment for me." Spotify announced that it would add advisory labels that direct listeners to a fact hub where COVID-19 is discussed on podcasts following public outcry over misinformation that was shared on Joe Rogan's podcast. In an Instagram video addressing the misinformation controversy, Joe said he is very happy with Spotify adding the advisory and said he would try to have more experts with differing opinions right after I have the controversial ones. Johnson commented on the video saying, "Great stuff here, brother. Perfectly articulated. Look forward to coming on one day and breaking out the tequila with you." Johnson's support for Rogan came under scrutiny from best-selling author and liberal activist Don Winslow, who asked if he actually listened to this man's many racist statements about black people. "You're a hero to many people, and using your platform to defend Joe Rogan, a guy that used and laughed about using the N-word dozens of times, is a terrible use of your power," said Don Winslow. Dwayne The Rock Johnson said, "I hear you as well as everyone here 100%, before backtracking some of his support for Rogan. Hey, that's just going to happen in this world. It's just going to happen where people are going to walk back because maybe they don't have all the information. But you know what? The internet does have all the information, and people can access all that information and find out stuff about Joe that maybe Mr. Dwayne did not know, The Rock Johnson. clips of Joe Rogan using the N-word have been circulating recently. Joe Rogan has issued an apology and said he hasn't used the word in years. Now, I know that to most people, there's no context where a white person is ever allowed to say that word, never mind publicly on a podcast, and I agree with that now. I haven't said it in years. This according to MSN.com and an article that was originally on Mediaite by Amy Sussman. Oh no, she took the picture. Catherine Huggins. And of course you can't see the picture. But you can see the podcast picture at mikesdailypodcast.com of me and the wonderful Patches the cat. Look who's here. Hello, Michael Masters, Madame Rootabega, and I hear you are going to the wonderful Shasta. Oh, yeah, my lovely lady friend and I were watching all these videos about Shasta lore. There's all kinds of bizarre cults and bizarre legends that started at Shasta. Should be interesting. The Saint Germain thing, the not the Lumineers, the Lucerne-nites. I don't know. The Luminites, something weird like that. But we're gonna go up there just to enjoy nature and have a great time. That sounds wonderful, Michael Master. I'm going to come with you. You sure are invited. Do you have a suitcase? Yes. Do you have a sleeping bag? Yes. Do you have something to carry your night guard with? No. A night guard? Mouth guard. That's what I meant. Oh, I've got that. Yes. Okay, good. Mouth guards, they can be helpful because we grind our teeth. We're full of anxiousness in this society and anxiety. Look who else is here.
Hello there, Mike. This is Valentino, the parking attendant.
And this is Bison Bentley. Do you know that?
Mike, we will listen to Joe Rogan no matter what he says and no matter what he talks about there.
Yeah, Joe Rogan. He should be named Chad. Do you know that? Chad Rogan. Interesting. Yeah, that probably fits. He kind of looks like a Chad, but you know, who am I to say? Next show, it's going to be the wonderful Chely Shoehart, Floyd the Floorman, John Deere the engineer. Chime in about anything we covered today on this episode 2380 as the sun is starting to set, just as I predicted. Ha ha! Yes, we will be back, and you can chime in. 336MM Daily, 3 plus 3 equals 6. MM is in Mike Matthews Daily, as in what this podcast tries to be, and sometimes gets interrupted by things, by life. Thank you for the interruptions, life.
Mike's Daily Podcast is written and produced and performed by Mike Matthews. His podcast is super easy to find. Download or listen to his show and read his blog at mikesdailypodcast.com. Email Mike now at mikesdailypodcast@gmail.com. See you tomorrow. Bye!